All right, welcome to Cube FM. To get started, can you let us know who you are, what's your role, and where do you work?
Yeah, my name is Shahar Zalai, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of GroundCover.
And what news would you like to share with our community today?
So GroundCover has been, up and running for a while. We've been reinventing observability for cloud-native environments with eBPF, which is a great technology. Regardless of what we're announcing today, eBPF has allowed us, with hundreds of customers, to basically allow them first to onboard frictionlessly into a kind of, all-in-one observability platform, from logs to metrics to traces. It's a very deep observability built into the Linux kernel, and also the ability to cover everything at once. eBPF has that ability to basically turn on the light if you want, right, in a big Kubernetes environment or big cloud environment. Recently, we've just taken that ability of using the eBPF as a sensor to tie that into kind of an end-to-end ability to create one-click dashboards, and therefore kind of the alertability around the infrastructure layer of Kubernetes with eBPF. So basically, you install the ground cover sensor, you get all this data out of the box, but also related visualizations that are immediately occupied and populated by the eBPF data collected, that allows you to visualize, troubleshoot, get into the weeds of your cloud native environment, basically without doing too much, knowing too much rather than what you care about, and also not setting up complex dashboards or filling around with query languages that you not necessarily want to learn. Right, so that's basically what we're doing today.
I also just want to unpack this a little bit more, a bit of a bonus question. How does observability without eBPF look?
So without eBPF, basically you go back into kind of an integration model, if you want to, right? You have the infrastructure layer and the application layer running on top of Kubernetes. They are kind of separated domains. You might use one agent to run the infrastructure to maybe scrape metrics or collect information from the Kubernetes API. And you might have a completely different beast running on your application layer, from an OpenTelemetry SDK to maybe something else to maybe nothing, right? If you have chosen to not do it. First of all, it creates kind of maybe an over-exaggerated democracy in that perspective. Some teams might choose to use some technologies that work together better than other teams that might be less proficient. And also correlating this data becomes very complex, right? It depends on you as a user. What have you instrumented? What type of technologies did you use to cover both infrastructure and application layers? eBPF first unifies that, right? There is no difference between infrastructure and application. It's basically baked into the Linux kernel, seen all the way through to the user space. So we can have insights from the infrastructure, like a Kubernetes events or a resource consumption metric of the specific pod we're interested in, and tie that immediately to a trace or a log emitted from the application layer without you doing any instrumentation or code changes to your application. So that ability provides a great out-of-the-box experience, right? I basically did nothing, just install a daemon set, for example, on my Kubernetes cluster, and now see metrics, logs, and traces from all the stack. And second, everything is correlated beautifully together because it's the same sensor, the same technology that collects all of them at the same time, the same place, which allows us to kind of take it to the next level and offer insights and deep context around what you're seeing. So eBPF, even if basically sometimes collecting the same data, can offer such more rich context and understanding of what you're seeing.
Now, with that in mind, I also wanted another bonus question. Since you mentioned the point about observability teams, so the people that are working on this, how much of observability is a people problem versus a technical problem?
So observability right now is built in a way that there's kind of a organizational back and forth, which is unhealthy, right? You have the infrastructure teams, the DevOps teams that basically eventually are the only ones that know how to make the complex decisions about the technology stack that they're running, right? Because even running an observability stack inside your main applicative stack in your production has some impacts, right? You need to pick and choose correctly and know what you're doing. They're the only ones that know how to do it, but they rely on developers on the other end that instrument code, emit the right metrics. And that type of working together around the observability is like great in theory, but in practice, it's really, really hard in big organizations. And basically, eBPF helps layer that down a bit better, right? Because eventually the infrastructure guy can do everything at once. So I think that, with great people that has the great focus on what they're doing, you can achieve great observability. But today, it's mostly an organizational problem that these technologies get stuck. We see it with OpenTelemetry. It's a great project, but eventually it requires so many stakeholders inside the organization. It always feels like a never-ending journey. And I think we're at a point where you want to get people as much as possible out of the loop because they're not observability engineers. They're building their product, right? And technologies like eBPF, which are frictionless, which basically kind of work out of band from me as a developer working on my service. I think that's the reason, exactly to your question, that they will pick up, because you want to give people value without putting them too much in the loop. Right now, they're kind of slowing down the adoption of observability.
Now, what's a specific pain point or problem that one-click dashboards with eBPF is solving?
I think that eventually people are not exactly familiar with Kubernetes like you expect them to, right? They're using this platform because they know it's the right thing. They're relying on the trend of cloud native microservices and Kubernetes picking up, and they know that if they have to make a decision now, that's the right technology because it will allow them the flexibility they probably need, right, in 2 years from now. But there's a lot of pain points when it comes to that, right? How does applications interconnect and eventually take resources from, for example, my node, right? They have interdependencies. Some application might interfere with another and therefore cause latencies. It's really hard to know how to over provision or under provision, resources for pods, for hosts inside the cluster. So we try to basically use the eBPF technology to provide that visualizations out of the box for you with an opinionated way of what we think would help you figure out how to observe Kubernetes without necessarily being a power user, right? Of figuring everything down to the bits and bytes. And we can do it because eBPF basically allows us to see all the way through, right? From infrastructure to application and so on. So we can create the context that you need in these dashboards to create alerts that make sense, like crashes of pods or unavailable deployments, or underutilization of hosts, or a pod crashing or reaching close to its memory limits, right? So it's kind of bringing our expertise as people working in cloud native observability together with the technology that can bring us the data without you doing much, right? To create an experience where dashboards are kind of a one-click fill, right? You don't overthink what you need to do.
So could you share the before and after this product announcement?
Yeah, before we released these kind of native one-click dashboards, people could still get this data, but they would have to maybe dig a bit deeper about what the metrics are that they want to explore, how do they want to explore and visualize them, what is important to them. Basically, we just took it one step further about offering you the type of visualizations, the type of monitors that we think are relevant for Kubernetes and for cloud native monitoring, and kind of bake them into the ground cover experience together with the eBPF technology. So we can offer the customers, our customers, that ability to, get value even all the way to visualizations really, really quickly. So it's kind of taking that extra step.
And just an aside, are there any plans to donate this to the CNCF, or that's not really in the cards right now? Just curious.
So eBPF is an open source project, right? It's been it belongs and being pushed by the Linux community. So we definitely believe in that as an open source product. Specifically, our dashboards and our utilization of eBPF is not open source right now, but as part of the community, it will definitely be relevant for everybody as a technology, right? So we definitely believe in that and contribute where we can. Specifically, Ground Cover itself and the way it utilizes eBPF is not open source.
What's Ground Cover's business model?
Ground Cover basically has a very unique pricing model. Part of what we do is we use a technology called Bring Your Own Cloud, which, regardless of eBPF, which is how we collect the data, we have a completely unique way to process and store the data. We basically stored it on premises on our customers' cloud premises. We manage it like it was a SaaS experience, but on your cloud premises. It means the data resides, basically in your VPC. It's secured, it's private, but it's also, you don't have to pay for data tracking and storage for a third-party vendor like Ground Cover. Therefore, we can stop pricing by data volume, which we're basically the only ones in the observability space that does that. We price only by the number of hosts or Kubernetes nodes that are covered with our eBPF sensor. And it's basically saying where you run the sensor, we can provide that, frictionless, very high coverage approach. But we will not charge you for data. Data is unlimited, no matter the retention, no matter what you want to do with it. because we were able to build a technology around bring your own cloud to store it on your premises and not force you into a SaaS experience where we host it and kind of make you pay for that margin for us. It allows customers to basically get 10x more value for the same price, and also get a much more predictable pricing model compared to data volume or gigabytes per second or kind of these models which are very unpredictable. So that's kind of our business model at the moment. We also have a free tier, by the way, so people can try it out, which is a great segue to try out the product. It's fully self-served, so just kind of to mention that as well.
And who are GroundCover's main competitors?
So GroundCover competes with the legacy big vendors right now in the market. We compete with Datadog, New Relic, Grafana Cloud. That's kind of who we see as our competitors. We replace them with a lot of our customers, end-to-end, log management, infrastructure monitoring, APM. So basically, that's kind of our North Star and our competitive base that we look at when we try to help customers today.
And what differentiates GroundCover from the competition?
So it's the two things we kind of mentioned, just bundled together. One is we're the only vendor which is eBPF first. We rely on eBPF to provide our full experience, from logs to metrics to the full APM experience. So everything we provide is out of the box in like a 60-second installation, which is a very, very unique approach. Again, unlike legacy solutions that require code changes and instrumentation and a lot of different technologies to kind of build into that stack. Second is we're built on top of that bring your own cloud architecture and not the pure SaaS model, which allows us to price differently, but also package the product differently. We're a single product. You get all the value at once. In Datadog, New Relic, and other vendors, basically you pay differently for log management, infrastructure monitoring, APM. You get to pick and choose what you pay for, and therefore, that price accumulates fast. In GroundCover, you get all of them all the time for the same host-based pricing model, unlimited data. And that's kind of the second point where we're very, very different than the competition right now.
And in terms of the end users that are benefiting from GroundCover and the technology that you're providing, leveraging eBPF, do they fit a certain profile from a certain sector? Are there any common characteristics that they have?
So I can say that it's all around, right? We have small startups that are choosing their first observability vendor, and they're looking for a cloud native modern solution. And that's why they would find GroundCover and just, find their self-serve path into GroundCover. And that's one section all the way through to Fortune 100 companies, which replace Datadog, replace New Relic at high scales, suffer from their pricing model, want to get more value, are currently very, bottlenecked around what data they store with their vendor and stuff like that. And that's where GroundCover comes in. Or they heard about eBPF and want to take advantage of its like extreme coverage and the value that it can provide. So we see customers from all across that spectrum.
Thank you very much for sharing your time with us today. Look forward to the next steps.
Thanks for having me.